January 17th, 1944. The fields outside a shattered village on the Italian front lie buried under a thin layer of winter frost. Smoke drifts through the morning light, curling above the broken walls where Allied infantry wait in silence. In the distance, the unmistakable growl of German armor grows louder, slow, deliberate, confident. Inside a dug-in anti-tank position, a single gunner wipes the fog from his sight. His hands move with steady rhythm, not from calm, but from routine built through months of fighting retreating battles. He knows the sound of every German tank, the clatter of a Panzer III, the deeper thunder of a Panzer IV, the slow crushing weight of a StuG II, and the intimidating metallic grind of something heavier. But today, he isn't waiting blindly. Stacked beside him is a carefully arranged line of shells, armor-piercing, high-explosive, sabot, and delayed fuse. A personal system he perfected through experience, failure, and survival. A sequence that allows him to strike whatever rolls toward him. And as the first silhouette emerges from the haze, his chosen shell locks into place, setting the stage for the strategy that changed the fight. In the early months of 1944, the Allied campaign in Italy had stalled into a grinding contest of endurance. Every advance came at a high cost, and every ridge or village seemed fortified by German units who had mastered the art of defensive warfare. Among those defending the line were armored formations equipped with a mix of Panzer IVs, StuG III assault guns, and a growing number of heavier vehicles that had been slowly trickling south from the German mainland. The variety of German armor meant that no single solution worked against all targets, and Allied gunners had to learn to adapt quickly to survive even a single engagement. For infantry anti-tank crews, especially those manning the dependable but aging 6-pounder or the more powerful 17-pounder, the challenge was not only to hit a target but to select the right shell in the critical seconds before firing. German armor layouts varied dramatically. A Panzer IV's frontal plate demanded different penetration characteristics than the sloped armor of a StuG III. Meanwhile, self-propelled guns often appeared from unexpected angles, presenting opportunities that vanished if the wrong ammunition was loaded. Reports circulated through frontline units describing how some crews struggled with the sheer speed of German armored movements. A tank would appear, then disappear behind terrain, forcing hasty guesses about its vulnerability. Ammunition storage was usually cramped, sometimes chaotic, and inexperienced gunners often fumbled between high-explosive rounds and armor-piercing shells. Yet some crews found ways to bring order to the chaos. They observed patterns in German armor, identified common weaknesses, and developed personal routines that made ammunition selection almost instinctive. These individual adaptations rarely appeared in official manuals, but they spread quietly from crew to crew. Among them was a method created by a gunner known for his precision under pressure, a man who refined a system to match shell type to the target before the target even came into clear view. His process emerged not from theory but from the realities of the battlefield, and they would shape the moment when German armor pushed toward his position once again. As the Italian campaign advanced, Allied intelligence improved its understanding of the German armored threat. Reports from North Africa, Sicily, and the Eastern Front revealed a consistent pattern. German vehicles were becoming heavier, better armed, and more resilient. The Panzer IV, once considered a medium tank, had been upgraded repeatedly with thicker armor and a long-barreled 75mm gun. The StuG III, originally designed as an infantry support weapon, had evolved into one of the most effective tank destroyers on the battlefield. Even hastily assembled vehicles like the Martyr series carried high-velocity guns capable of outmatching Allied armor at long range. For gunners, these realities meant that hesitation could be fatal. In many engagements, German crews fired first simply because they identified targets more quickly or maneuvered to positions that forced Allied guns into rushed responses. The environment in Italy made this problem worse. Narrow valleys and steep ridgelines limited mobility, creating moments when a gunner had only a few seconds to determine which shell could punch through an enemy's armor before the enemy fired back. A misjudged round too light, too slow, or designed for the wrong purpose often resulted in the tank surviving long enough to return deadly fire. Training manuals emphasized discipline and procedure, but battlefield veterans understood that no rulebook could replace experience. They learned which silhouettes belonged to which Panzer variant, how German commanders used terrain to mask their approach, and how different armor angles affected penetration. Gunners began pre-arranging their ammunition in specific sequences, reducing the time needed to locate the right shell. Some crews placed armor-piercing rounds closest to the breech, while others prioritized high-explosive shells to break up infantry screens. The gunner whose method would later be remembered by his unit took this idea further. Instead of simply organizing ammunition by type, he created a system linked directly to German armor patterns, integrating recognition, probability, and firing order into one fluid process. It was a practical response to a battlefield that rarely offered second chances, and it would soon be tested under the most intense conditions his crew had ever faced. Every anti-tank crew lived with the constant knowledge that their position was one of the most dangerous on the battlefield. Their gun was powerful, but it was also fixed, exposed, and a magnet for enemy fire the moment it revealed its location. This pressure shaped the mindset of the gunner at the center of this story. He had watched crews freeze under stress, fumbling between shells while the silhouette of a German tank grew larger with each passing second. He had seen positions overrun simply because the wrong ammunition was chambered at the wrong moment. For him, surviving required reducing uncertainty to the smallest degree possible. His system began with the simple idea that hesitation was the real enemy. If he could predict which German vehicle was most likely to appear on a given day or terrain, he could prepare his ammunition in a sequence that matched those probabilities, not guesswork pattern recognition. The valleys of Italy favored StuG IIIs, the open fields drew Panzer IVs. Areas near supply routes risked encounters with heavier vehicles. Each round in his stack represented not just a tool, but a decision already made before the enemy arrived. That preparation allowed him to stay calm when others panicked. He trained his loader to memorize the order. He rehearsed the motion of selecting shells until it became instinct. In a war shaped by machines, it was the human instinct for order that kept his crew alive, and that instinct formed the foundation of the method he would soon rely upon under fire. Ammunition selection was not a matter of preference. It was a technical equation based on armor thickness, angle, and construction. German vehicles in Italy presented a wide spectrum of challenges. The Panzer IV's frontal armor could stop older armor-piercing rounds unless fired at close range or at a precise angle. The StuG III's low silhouette and sloped front made it even harder to penetrate, demanding higher velocity shells capable of maintaining their integrity on impact. Meanwhile, soft-skinned vehicles and infantry screens required high explosive rounds that produced fragmentation rather than penetration. The gunner system accounted for all of it. He placed his fastest, highest velocity armor-piercing rounds first in the stack, anticipating StuG assaults. Behind them came regular armor-piercing shells for Panzer IVs approaching from medium distance. High-explosive rounds followed in case a half-track or infantry push preceded the armor. And at the rear, he kept special rounds, sabot or delayed fuse shells for unexpected heavy targets or difficult angles. This order wasn't rigid. He adapted it based on terrain, intelligence reports, and the patterns he observed from the Germans he fought. If the enemy favored flanking maneuvers, he adjusted accordingly. If reconnaissance reported an armored company moving nearby, he shifted the sequence to emphasize penetration. In essence, he transformed ammunition storage from a chaotic pile into a tactical tool. Every gun has limitations, but his method ensured he could exploit every opportunity and compensate for every threat before the turret or casemate of a German vehicle even came into view. The effectiveness of the gunner-S system relied not only on technical skill but also on leadership within his crew. In a small anti-tank team, every member had a defined role, yet every role required trust. The loader, often under the gunner's direct command, had to act with precision and speed. Miscommunication could cost lives. The gunner established a rhythm sequence of actions that transformed stress into predictable procedure. Leadership extended beyond commands. It involved anticipating the enemy and positioning his team accordingly. He chose the angle of fire, determined when to reveal the gun, and decided which rounds would be fired first. These decisions were informed by experience, battlefield observation, and instinct, honed over months of combat. Even under the whine of approaching tanks and the staccato of small arms fire, the gunner remained composed, projecting calm onto his crew. When the first German vehicle appeared, every action flowed seamlessly. Each shell slid into place without hesitation. Each shot carried the weight of prior calculations and split-second judgments. His crew did not merely react, they executed a preordained plan under extreme pressure. Leadership here was less about authority and more about certainty. This certainty allowed the system to function as intended. Ammunition selection became an extension of strategy, a quiet victory before the first shell even left the barrel. German armored crews were skilled, disciplined, and aware of Allied anti-tank tactics. They understood that advancing infantry or vehicles without proper reconnaissance often led to ambush. Yet, they also faced the same challenge as the gunner: uncertainty. They could see the landscape, note likely firing positions, and anticipate minefields. But the precise placement and readiness of Allied anti-tank crews remained hidden until the first shot. The gunner's method exploited this uncertainty. By pre-selecting rounds, he reduced the time between sighting a tank and firing the correct ammunition. To a German crew, what appeared as hesitation or misfire from other positions was, in his hands, instantaneous response. Where most gunners wasted precious seconds fumbling between shells, he struck immediately with the round capable of penetrating armor. This tactical awareness disrupted the enemy's calculations. Panzer IVs that expected a glancing hit found themselves disabled. StuG IIIs that relied on surprise were met with precise, lethal impact. Even coordinated assaults lost momentum because each vehicle that advanced was countered before it could exploit terrain. The system did not guarantee survival, but it imposed a psychological effect on German crews. The expectation of resistance became an equation they could not easily solve. In the calculus of armored warfare, speed, accuracy, and preemptive preparation were often more decisive than numerical superiority. And in this sense, the gunner had transformed his individual discipline into a force multiplier on the battlefield. February 2, 1944. The dawn mist clung to the hills around the village of Cassino, Italy. The sounds of distant artillery punctuated the stillness, and the rhythmic crunch of tracked vehicles signaled an approaching armored column. From his dug-in position, the gunner's eyes traced the line of ridges, calculating angles, distances, and likely enemy approaches. At 7:15, the first Panzer IV emerged from cover, its long barrel catching the pale sunlight. The gunner's hands moved with practiced efficiency. The armor-piercing round he had positioned first slid into the breech without hesitation. A single shot. The Panzer IV's frontal plate shivered under the impact, the tank grinding to a halt. Seconds later, a StuG III crested a ridge, attempting to use its low profile to mask its approach. The gunner, anticipating this silhouette, chambered the high-velocity shell he had stacked immediately behind the first. The round struck with precision, and the assault gun lurched violently, disabled before it could fire. His loader never faltered, passing shells with mechanical rhythm. Within 20 minutes, a dozen vehicles had advanced along predictable lines. Each was met with the pre-selected round suited to its armor. Sabot rounds shattered tracks, high-explosive shells cleared infantry screens, and armor-piercing rounds punctured frontal plates. German commanders adjusted, attempting flanking maneuvers, but the gunners' observation and anticipation neutralized their attempts. The effectiveness of the system became obvious not only in destruction but in the time saved. The speed of correct ammunition deployment prevented hesitation, and hesitation on this battlefield equaled death. The gunner had transformed individual preparation into battlefield dominance, each shot reinforcing the rhythm of the method he had honed over months of experience. As the sun rose higher, the mist began to burn off, revealing a landscape littered with disabled vehicles. The enemy column's momentum had been shattered before it could threaten Allied positions. Yet the true test, the heaviest vehicles, and the largest tactical risks, was still approaching, waiting to challenge the limits of the gunner's method. By 9 o'clock, the German advance intensified. A tiger eye appeared on the far ridge, its massive frame dwarfing the Panzer IVs and StuG IIIs that had already been neutralized. Its thick frontal armor presented a new challenge. Standard armor-piercing rounds would not suffice. The gunner's system, however, anticipated such possibilities. A delayed fuse high-velocity round had been reserved precisely for this contingency. He calibrated his sight, accounting for distance, angle, and slope. The Tiger's commander, confident in his armor, began a slow advance toward the valley. The first shot struck the frontal plate, leaving a deep smoking dent but not disabling the tank. The gunner did not hesitate. He chambered the follow-up round from his prearranged sequence. The second shot penetrated the side, igniting ammunition inside the Tiger. The massive vehicle shuddered violently, then went silent, a testament to the precision of preparation and the timing of action. Around him, the battlefield continued in relentless rhythm. A half-track carrying infantry attempted to exploit gaps in the line. A high-explosive round from the gunner stack detonated amid the approaching troops, scattering them before they could deploy. Each decision, each round, flowed seamlessly into the next. By mid-morning, the German attack had been decisively blunted. Units that had counted on rapid penetration and surprise were now stalled, some retreating, others immobilized. The gunner system had not only neutralized vehicles but imposed tactical paralysis on the enemy. From the vantage point of his observation post, he surveyed the devastation, shattered metal, smoke rising in columns, and the quiet of soldiers reassessing their approach. One man, with methodical preparation and calm under fire, had shaped the outcome of a critical engagement. The momentum of the German advance had been broken, and the battlefield belonged to those who had mastered both anticipation and precision. The moment was not just a victory of firepower, but of foresight, the culmination of a system designed to match shell to threat, instinct to calculation. The battle had turned, and the consequences would ripple far beyond this ridge in the Italian countryside. The battlefield settled into an uneasy silence after the morning's engagement. Smoke curled above the wrecked vehicles, and the air carried the acrid scent of burning fuel and scorched metal. German units that had once advanced with confidence now struggled to regroup. Reports later confirmed that several tanks were destroyed, a number immobilized, and many crews had been forced to retreat under fire. The gunner's meticulous ammunition system had inflicted damage far beyond what a single anti-tank position might normally achieve. Allied commanders took note. The efficiency of the engagement demonstrated how small, well-trained teams could influence broader operations. The gunner's method became a case study in preparation, observation, and rapid execution. By arranging rounds according to enemy type and anticipated approach, a single crew could effectively slow or even halt an armored advance, buying precious time for infantry and artillery to adjust. For the gunner himself, the aftermath was quieter, marked by reflection rather than celebration. Each shell fired, each vehicle destroyed, carried weight lives were taken, and the reality of war was never abstract. Yet, the method he had refined had not only protected his crew but ensured that their actions had tangible tactical effect. German commanders, reviewing reports of the stalled advance, recognized a pattern of unusually precise resistance. Observers noted the unusual speed at which rounds were fired and targets neutralized. Though not publicized, these accounts reached higher command and influenced future operational planning, emphasizing reconnaissance and caution when advancing against entrenched anti-tank positions. The valley itself, once a corridor for German maneuver, was now littered with wreckage, a stark visual record of the cost of misjudgment and the advantage gained through preparation. And while this engagement represented just one day in a larger campaign, its lessons would echo across the Italian front, reinforcing the value of discipline, anticipation, and tactical ingenuity in a war increasingly defined by mechanized firepower. The stage was set for continued resistance, but the next threat loomed larger, heavier, and closer than before. The gunner's method would face its ultimate test. By late afternoon, reports from adjacent units began to clarify the full scope of the encounter. At least 15 German armored vehicles had been neutralized, with 3 more damaged beyond immediate repair. Infantry casualties were comparatively low, largely due to the gunner's ability to anticipate troop movements and deploy high-explosive rounds with precision. The engagement demonstrated that even a small, disciplined anti-tank team could dramatically alter the outcome of an advancing column. The impact on morale was equally significant. Allied infantry, often anxious when facing German armor, observed the effectiveness of a single crew operating with methodical precision. Confidence grew not just in weaponry, but in the human ability to impose order on chaos. For the German crews, the encounter became a cautionary tale. The expectation that their armor would dominate the battlefield was disrupted by the speed and accuracy of pre-selected ammunition. Commanders noted that hesitation and overcaution became more common after such encounters, subtly influencing subsequent operational choices. Military historians later analyzed the engagement as an example of tactical innovation under pressure. The system of ammunition sequencing allowed gunners to compress reaction time from several critical seconds into near-instantaneous response. In practical terms, it transformed a defensive position into a force multiplier, allowing a few men to halt or even rout larger enemy formations. Reports emphasized that this method required not only technical knowledge of armor and weaponry, but also experience, calm under fire, and foresight in organizing the limited resources available at the front line. The valley where the battle occurred remained a somber tableau of war-twisted metal, scorched earth, and the quiet testimony of disciplined preparation. The gunner and his team continued to hold their position, ready for the next wave, their method tested and proven. In the broader narrative of the Italian campaign, the incident illustrated how individual skill and innovation could influence larger operations, leaving an enduring lesson in the value of anticipation, tactical awareness, and the disciplined application of technology. The winter light faded, casting long shadows over the battlefield, a visual reminder that war favored not only the strongest, but the prepared and the deliberate. In the quiet that followed, the significance of the engagement extended beyond the destruction of tanks and vehicles. It was a demonstration of how human ingenuity, discipline, and foresight could shape the outcome of battle as much as firepower. The gunner's system of ammunition selection transformed a single anti-tank position into a force capable of dictating the pace of an advance, proving that preparation could outweigh sheer numbers. History often remembers grand offensives and sweeping maneuvers, but moments like this reveal the subtle, calculated acts that tipped the balance. A methodical arrangement of shells, a calm mind under pressure, and the ability to anticipate enemy behavior became as decisive as any heavy artillery or armored formation. The engagement underscored the evolving nature of warfare, where mechanized units demanded not only brute force but precise knowledge, timing, and adaptability from those tasked with countering them. Beyond the battlefield, the human element remained at the core. The gunner's actions were grounded in experience, observation, and the relentless drive to protect his team. In each shot, there was both a tactical decision and a personal commitment to survival and duty. His method, later studied and adapted in other theaters, offered a lesson that preparation and careful calculation could create disproportionate effects in combat. As the winter sun sank behind the Italian ridges, the battlefield fell silent. Wrecked vehicles, scorched earth, and the lingering echo of shells served as reminders of both the cost and the discipline required in war. In that moment, the true lesson emerged. Mastery over small details, human, technical, and tactical, can shape history, turning individual skill into a decisive force in the larger sweep of conflict.